Thanks for joining us on the DDS Faith Podcast. Our prayer is that as we discuss what God has to teach us through His Word, we can all learn how to deepen, defend, and share our faith in Jesus Christ. You know, this will officially be my first episode back. Because I know we recorded one a couple weeks ago with Eli before he left.
Yeah.
But that will air later. So this will be my first episode back.
Bro, I don't even know.
Yeah, I'm telling you. This is my first episode back. So right here.
What about the family discipleship one?
Yeah, that will air like in 2 weeks after this one airs.
Oh, why is this one airing before?
Because it airs the week of it comes out on July the 3rd.
Oh.
And the other one won't come out until a couple weeks later.
Sure.
So
sounds good to me.
So when I tell you this is my first episode back, I will pause so that way when you do post-production or whatever, you can put in the sound of applause. So like I was saying, this will be my first episode back. So I will pause here so in your post-production and edit, you can insert the sound of applause and maybe some celebratory music of some kind. I won't tell you what kind, but I will tell you that there's no copyright on the Hallelujah Chorus. So whatever you feel led to put in post-production. So
Thinking like taps, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there copyright on tape?
Yeah, there probably
Yeah.
is.
yeah, maybe the military has copyright
Reveille.
on that.
How's Reveille go?
But
then- The
I
nature,
like taps better.
yeah, that's what they play when you
Check.
pass
Oh, look
on.
at that.
Yeah.
But then the nature of our schedule is I'm here today and then I'll be gone for like 2 weeks.
I just work here.
So Eli's off on his European
Tour.
tour. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess you're filling in for Eli tonight. You're just the fill-in there.
We have Todd.
You're a permanent. Todd may end up being the next permanent
Yes.
permanent guest.
Yes, we got a new permanent guest.
Yeah. So I'm the guy that you call when you can't get nobody else to come. Hey, Todd's off on disability. We can get him to come by.
We got a few others, you know. They're coming down the pipeline, you know.
Yeah, as soon as we pay them.
You're our definite. Hey, can you come here today? You know,
Yeah, I can. Sure.
can you come here next week? I think I forgot to ask you
Yeah.
because
Okay.
he's not going to be here.
Yeah, I'll
So
be
it's,
here.
it's just going to be. It might just be me and you
Okay.
Yeah.
because we're not going to have Tim, are we?
No,
Can you?
because you may be doing your call with Eli.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we may try that.
Yeah.
I like the glasses.
Yeah. I figured it's appropriate for this evening.
Yeah.
Talk about
You're
Merc.
a grand old flag.
You know what?
You're a high flying flag. Don't
Here,
do
Todd, you want to be cool? Well, Todd's got glasses. You
What?
should. One of you should be
it.
cool.
We have more. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Why did you have these?
Just figured it would, because this will air on July the 3rd. And tomorrow, as people are listening, if they're listening on the 3rd, tomorrow will be July the 4th. So,
Oh, well, there you go. Okay.
yeah.
Well,
I
happy
like
4th of July,
You look like Elton John.
America.
America.
Yeah.
I like it.
I can't do it with those glasses.
Can't
I'm
do it?
sorry. No.
I may sit here for the whole time and just have these on the whole entire.
He's gonna fall asleep.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna know. He's just seeing stars.
That's right.
I'll be here all week.
Yeah, we can't get rid of you.
So tonight's episode, or today's episode, however you want to look at that.
Whatever time of day you're listening.
Yeah, whatever time of day
This
you're listening.
morning, this
Yeah.
afternoon.
or tomorrow even.
Yes.
Or
If you're
the
listening
next
in the
day, or-
morning, good morning. If
Technically, you guys are gonna listen to this weeks from
Yeah.
now. So you know, whatever.
you're listening in the afternoon, good afternoon. If
Yeah,
you're
it's still-
listening at night, good night.
But anyway, today's topic, we're going to talk about, you know, what it means to be an American and Christian. Can you be both? Can you be an American and Christian? You know, can you be patriotic and still be Christian?
There was, you remember, Todd, you may know, have you ever heard of an etiquette manual? good manners, rules for good manners. They used to say that, or the etiquette handbook would tell you that there were 3 topics you did not discuss in civilized company.
Oh yeah.
And it was politics,
Religion.
sex, and religion.
Yes.
We're going to hit 2 of those. We may hit 3 because politicians love sex and the church is scared of it. So
That's so true. Well, the first thing that comes to mind, and we'll talk about some other stuff later down the road. But really, I want to look at kind of the present, right here and now. How much should we be listening to our government? How much should we submit to them? So, for example, Jesus talks about taxes. And when they come in, I think it's Matthew 22, and they come in, they were saying, hey, do you pay taxes to Caesar or whatever? And he says, whose face is on this? They said Caesar. He said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Pay your taxes and pay. And he says, and to give to God what is God's. Make sure you're tithing. Make sure you're, donating your money to local churches or whatever. But then also pay your taxes. And there's some different things that people may want to jump in on that. But the other one is Romans 13, talks about submit to your governing authorities. It specifically says that God put them in that position for a reason. Like him or hate him, Joe Biden's the president of the United States, and the Lord your God put him there. And if you don't like that, I'm sorry,
It's like every time, and it doesn't matter who is the president. I've seen it with Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Bill Clinton, Obama. It doesn't matter. You see the bumper stickers that says, whoever's president, not my president. I'm like, what country do you live in? Like,
it's not really if you're an American citizen, he's your president.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So essentially, as for the government, we should comply. We should do what they ask. Now, there's limits to that. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But obviously, if they're telling us to, you're not allowed to meet as a church anymore, or something like that. Like obviously, we can push back against that. Now, go ahead.
There, you got some of that back during the whole
COVID yeah.
pandemic thing, because it was like, there was a number, crowds over 100 people you couldn't meet.
Yeah, and they kept dropping it. It just be like 10 people, 5 people.
And I just remember, again, for me, COVID was just a huge test from the Lord that a lot of people failed miserably. A lot of churches including the one that I was in at the time, because a lot of people just fussed and griped. They can't tell us we can't go to church. Right. And I'm like, all right, hold up. Nobody is going to any NFL games.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to any basketball games.
They weren't picking on church.
Yeah. Nobody was going to concerts.
It was everybody across the board. And I remember there were people that were just, they're coming in on our freedom and they're trying to shut the church down. They're never going to let us open up again. It's like, they're closing everything, guys. It's okay. Like, this is not government overreach. When everything was shut down, that was not a place where we should be bucking back at them.
Again, because Jesus says he's going to build his church and the gates of hell will not prevail. Mm-hmm. All right. If God had wanted the church doors to stay open, they would have stayed open. Again, I'm just convinced that was a test. God allowed the church doors to be closed to see what the people would do once they couldn't actually be in the building. It's like, oh, now you have to actually go out and be the church.
Oh, man.
In the community. But it was just months of people griping and moaning about the government. And they were persecuting Christians. And I'm like, take a trip to China and then come back and talk to me about
persecuted
Christians.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So,
man, that killed me when it came to how people were reacting. You know, with COVID, it was such a big deal because I think you're absolutely right. God had every intention of, like, he was just like, let's see what my people will do. You know, and what did they do? They just wanted to go back to doing the same thing that they were always doing.
Now,
And-
let's
Go
clarify. That's not every church.
Of course
because
not,
there
yeah.
were a lot of churches who did step up and go out.
Right. And that's what we're
But
supposed to do.
There were a lot of churches that just folded their arms and pouted and
Right.
wanted to go to Sunday school.
And what it boiled down to was they just wanted their Sunday school and they wanted their church service.
Right.
That's what they wanted because that's what they've grown up with. That's what. Guess what? Let's roll the tape back to the first century church with Paul. They didn't have that.
Right.
They had home churches. They met just kind of together. And, you know, we had such a good opportunity when COVID hit to really harp on some small groups, you know, like get together in small groups and then go out and actually try to make disciples with people instead of, hey, why don't you come to church with me? Like you kind of lost that.
Right.
You know, you weren't able to say, why don't you come to church with me on Sunday? You know, which was the Baptist cop out for evangelism.
Yeah, come to church and let somebody else
Yep.
share the gospel. That way, I brought you to church. My job's done. Now the preacher's going to preach
Uh-huh. Yep.
and get you saved.
I think you're right on. I think how we've done church for almost my entire life is not necessarily a bad thing, but that's not exactly what
Yep.
we're supposed to.
Yep.
That's the icing on the cake, right?
That's exactly right.
That's whenever you go and hang out and should be celebrating your what you've done through the week.
Yep. That's exactly right. Just like you come to church on Sunday and it should be, all right, tell me some of your discipleship, you know, say, okay, you're discipling, I don't know, Cody, you know, and how's discipleship going with Cody? You know, we've got, 5-10 guys all in the same place and we just hold each other accountable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it should look like. That's what we need to try to be doing. But we don't. Nobody holds each other accountable in that way. It's all about not sinning. In the church, I'm dead serious. Look at it. Most of what church is don't sin. And that's not the design. The design is not don't sin or have good morals. Those are good things, and those are things that we should be doing. But that's not the mission of the church. The mission of the church is to go and make disciples. Make copies of yourself, teaching them all that he's commanded us. But instead, it's just kind of like, that's somebody else's job, I show up to church, and my friend held me accountable, and I have there's somebody like, I have successfully stopped watching pornography, or like, I'm no longer sleeping with my girlfriend, or name it.
I told you we'd get to the sex part eventually.
Yeah, you're right. We did it. Oh my goodness, that's
the
amazing.
part where the church is afraid of it.
Wow, that's good call, Jeremy.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
prophecy.
So
Well, again, for me, the shutdown during the pandemic, I think was God trying to get our attention, saying, hey, you're running out of time. And when you go back, you need to be serious about going out and reaching the lost. And I think that just got lost just kind of went over a lot of people's heads,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because once the church that I was in, once things started to open back up, I just saw it going back to what it was before. And that was one of the reasons I had to leave. I was just kind of like,
Y'all didn't want to. You had the opportunity and you didn't change.
yeah.
Yeah. So let's jump off of COVID because I mean that hit.
Well, I mean,
we
we
were
were
making
talking
the
about
point.
that about with government, like that
Right.
was the
That was
government
not
was
government.
not targeting the church.
Correct. That was not government overreach. So there's some things that the government does in America, and part of our American heritage and the laws of this country. So the Bible says submit to governing authorities. You need to follow the law of the land. Okay, that's true. Well, part of the law of our land is we don't have to like our president. We can say whatever we want about him, and we can do all these things, and we have this extra. It's really kind of an anomaly because it's very different from the first century church. Because guess what? If you trash Caesar, you're getting the boot. You're in trouble. Like you're probably going to get tortured and die,
Or fed to a lion.
or fed to a lion. Yes. You know, they may suggest something in America, and we don't necessarily have to follow it. Now, there are certain things that we should definitely follow, like laws and stuff, but nothing has infringed our right for religion. You know,
Yet.
we've been not yet. We've been able to express ourselves any way that we want, and because it's in our Constitution, that's our law. So we're actually not breaking the law. The hairy situation is what you look at on the founding of this country, of whether or not that in general was Christian. So, you know, we're supposed to submit to governing authorities, but there was the American Revolution, and it was all about paying too much taxes and whatnot. They didn't want to follow their authority, so what'd they do? Boston Tea Party, they throw out all this stuff, and they write a breakup letter to the British king or whatever, or England.
King George.
King George. What really was it? George? That's
George the Third, I believe.
Oh, wow. Good job. Mr. Trivia over here. Now, as an
dad-
American...
My dad was a high school history teacher.
Oh, nice. As an American, I'm like, yeah, America! You know? But as a Christian in that particular time, I don't think it should have been done. I think it was not Christian. I don't know. What are your takes on that? What are your thoughts? It was not necessarily the Christian thing to do.
So I really don't know enough about it to speak on it as far as why they actually did what they did.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you know, I know the Boston Tea Party and all that, but
Yeah.
So I have a book that I've read, and it talks about how that the leaders at the time called for fasting and prayer, and it's actually like it's got newspaper articles
Oh, really?
written, you know, so it's not just, you know,
Yeah.
hey, George Washington did this because I said he did. No, it was
Right.
like newspaper articles,
Yeah,
the
you got
leaders at the
proof.
time calling, and they're like, hey, look, here's what we've got going on. We want everybody to fast and pray and think about it. So in that essence, you know, I have to say, well, it was Christian.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily know if the way that they did it was Christian, you know. Oh, I don't like the way they're doing this. Well, we're going to.
Over the, I mean,
But they did
Yeah.
actually, we did have leaders at the time that were actually seeking, not all of them naturally, but some of the prominent leaders of the time were seeking the Lord and seeking his
Yeah.
counsel and
I'm sure they
his
were.
protection.
And I'm sure they were, and it was based on. I think there were some Christian values that were within that, but even doing it in the name of the Lord doesn't mean it was what we were supposed to do necessarily. I'm glad we did it. I'm glad to be an American. You know, again,
Yeah.
America. You know, but you know, I'm glad to hear that they were praying about it. But I don't know. I guess when I hear that, I wonder. You know, when I've seen church people pray, you know, it's like, are they really praying? Or are they just saying? Because you know, it's very common for us to say, you know, oh yeah, I'll pray for your brother, and then don't
Yeah.
pray for you. You know.
Yeah. Yes, it is. So I will speak on that.
Go for it.
So I have a mentor that I met when I was in South Carolina, who, when I would ask him, I would send him a text. Hey man, I need you to pray for me.
Yeah.
He'd send me a prayer
Excellent.
back in text,
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
you know, and I thought that was really cool. But then I thought, man, I'd like to do that. But, you know, praying in public is intimidating enough.
Yeah.
But when you actually write it down in a text message and send it out, that's extremely intimidating.
Yeah.
But I got to where I was doing that. And now if somebody sends me a text that says, hey, man, I need you to pray, instead of saying, okay, man, I'll pray for you, and then I'll forget about it
Right. Exactly.
and won't go and pray.
It's not like you're legitimately just like, I'm not going to pray for them. Like you legitimately forget.
Right.
It's understandable.
Right. And 3 days later, oh, man, I meant to pray for, west,
Right.
but I forgot about it. But right now I'm sitting in the DMV getting my license, something like
Yeah.
that, But
yeah.
so now I've got into the habit of, because he showed me how to do that.
Yeah.
I got into the habit of, if somebody sends me a text or if they just ask me to pray for them, like, all right, let's pray.
Yeah.
So if you don't want me to pray for you in the middle of Food City, don't go, hey man, I need you to pray for me, because I'm getting to the
Yeah.
age now where I can't remember to pray for you at night
Right.
in my prayer time. So we're going to pray right now.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with praying right then and there, and actually that's preferred.
Yeah.
I know I used to do that all the time. Now I do it about half the time, and it just, I don't know. I don't have a good excuse for it. I really just need to go back and just start doing it. But anyway, back, and maybe they did pray for it, and they could have.
Yeah.
But still, as for what Jesus said, I mean, we're not supposed to overthrow our government. Like, we're supposed to submit to our governing authorities. So I'm not going to sit here and say it was absolutely wrong for the American Revolution was sin. Like, I'm not going to judge that. God can judge that. That's his deal, not mine. But what my point is I think we should question that as far as our Christianity. And when we identify as an American, well, do you identify as an American? And this is going to transition for us just to really talk about today again. Are we identifying as an American? Is it my American identity? Is it my Christian identity? Or is it my American Christian identity? And I have this sort of hybrid going on.
I think that's what you see in a lot of churches. At least that has been my experience in the 25 years that I was doing vocational ministry, was a lot of pastors and church leaders will look at and interpret scripture through
American eyes.
the lens
That's perfect.
the lens of American culture.
Yeah.
I really, if you go back and listen, Eli's not here, so he can't quote the episode, but there was an episode where he talked about the passage from Chronicles.
Yep.
That if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will hear them from heaven, and then I
Right.
will heal their land. You will hear that from American pulpits almost every 4th of July weekend.
Yep.
There's 3 weekends: 4th of July weekend, Memorial Day weekend, and the Sunday before
Veterans Day.
And they will pull that verse out. But, Eli even pointed it out. That is a promise for Israel.
Exactly.
And
Now you can make
pastors-
the argument.
pastors will read that and be like,
yeah.
he's talking about America. And I'm like, no, in that context, he's talking about Israel.
Right. So you can make the argument that, he's talking about the, nation of Israel, or, maybe he's talking about us. Maybe he's talking about Christians in general, but he doesn't literally mean their land necessarily. A lot of people, they look at the Bible and they see all these different lists of things that are wrong. And it's like, those were for Israel. Those are for Christians, not non-believers. They're not held to that standard. Now,
Which
once
is
they know
why-
Christ, it's different.
It's both frustrating and humorous if you turn on the news, which I do I don't even turn it on at my house. If I see news, I'm at somebody else's house and they've got it on.
Yeah.
But then you see all of these protests, whatever they're protesting that week,
Right.
One week it's, the overturn of Roe versus Wade. Another week it's some drag queen show in Knoxville. And Christians are out, Christians are out there, with Bible in hand, just yelling at the people on the opposite side. And I'm like, how do you think that's going to reach them?
Right.
I mean, what do you think that their takeaway is from your behavior?
Well, they're doing it backwards.
I'm like, why do you expect pagans to act like believers?
Exactly. That's exactly right. We we look at other people and we're like, okay, let's get them ready for God. Let's clean up their sin first. No. Introduce them to Jesus, and
He cleans them up.
will clean them up. He's the one that baptizes. He's the one that washes us clean.
Well,
Not your, throwing your holy Bible up and saying abortion is a sin. And while I agree with that statement, that has nothing to do with those people. Now, am I going to say, yeah, I'm against it, but am I going to hate that person? Absolutely not. And I've met people that have had abortions, and I believe that to be murder.
I mean, that was just an example. Pick your
Pick
your social issue
whatever
that
it
people
is.
are arguing about and politicizing
Right.
too. And it was like, go back to scripture. When Jesus encountered sinners, how did he do it?
Yeah.
Did he beat them over the head with a
No,
Bible?
he did not.
Or a protest sign, or stick a finger in their face and yell at? Now, he did overthrow a few tables.
But he did that. But
that
he did
was
that to
the
so-called
religious
believers.
piece.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was yes. I think
See,
that might have been a few committee meetings he had to like.
Notice how Jesus treats unbelievers versus so-called believers.
Right.
Go look at it.
Right.
Because he is mean to some of those religious people, and then for the woman caught in adultery, he's like, you're good. Doesn't mean it's right. He wasn't condoning the behavior, but it's more about the relationship with Jesus.
So that's when you see these people, church people, Christians, on the news, and they just look angry and they're pointing fingers and yelling, and I'm like, if Jesus was here, how would he
Exactly.
how would he engage with those people? What are you?
Sorry. No, this is righteous anger. Okay? So we're supposed to be righteously angry, right? Righteous anger has to do with the church and the people within it, not on the outside. There's not a lot of righteous anger for that. And another thing on that is righteous anger has no pride. It's anger without pride. Think about it next time you're angry. Is this about me and what's happened to me, and it's very self-centered, or am I mad because of something else that happened?
Well, then people tend to get upset for God.
Right.
Like, oh, these people are
That's
sinners
not righteous anger.
and pagans, and they're offending God, and so then they hit the streets with their protests and arguments, and I it's just like, you have to laugh and go like, how arrogant are you that you think God needs you to defend himself?
Right. Yeah. Well, look at Noah, and you see the flood, and God is angry at their sin. Now, some people take a little microscope on that, and they're like, see, they're doing this and this and this and this, and those are the sins, those are the bad ones, and we're doing that now. God's going to come down on us. It's like, okay, hold on now. Let's back the train up just a little bit. Because when we look at the people that were in Noah's time, were they not all descendants of Adam? Yes, they were. And, God was, he was trying to have a relationship with these people, and they just turned away and did whatever they wanted. And, even when you start to look in Exodus, and it gives the story of the Israelites, they continue to complain and go against God multiple times. And a lot of us, we give Israel a hard time. We're like, well, how could they do that? We do it all the time.
Right.
Don't kid yourself.
Yes.
And there are passages in there, especially when you read through Chronicles and talk about the kings.
Right.
And it'll be like, all right, well, so-and-so became king when he was 20 years old. He ruled for 40 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And then,
Pretty much all of them.
so, well, yeah, all of them except for maybe two.
David and Solomon. And even
No,
those
there
guys.
there were some.
Even those guys,
There were some later on.
There was some more in there later on.
There was
that-
like, that's
Was
why
it?
I wasn't thinking David and Solomon. I was going
yeah.
Absalom, Jeroboam, and all that.
Absalom and Jeroboam, they were rough.
Yeah, Ahab. No,
Ahab was terrible.
I'm not.
Ahab was
I'm not
Jezebel.
saying Ahab was the good one. That's
Go find it real quick.
I want to say Asa. ASA. maybe he was one of the good. Anyway, my point I'm trying to make is the leaders were doing evil, so therefore the nation followed them.
Mm-hmm.
And there came a time the Lord finally just handed them over to their
Right.
sin,
That's exactly
and that's
right.
when they get carried off into
Yep.
captivity with
And-
Babylon. So, I mean, and you mentioned earlier, was the American Revolution Christian? I think you need to have a theological historian. That's because I'm not, even though my dad was a high school history teacher, I don't know enough about that to make a claim one way or the other. I kind of lean more toward it was, just because you can see how God led through
Yeah.
that. You can see how this country has prospered since its inception,
Oh yeah.
and how he has blessed us. Then on the other hand, you can also see over the last century how we've just kind of gone farther and farther and farther. And I think there will come a time when the Lord, like Israel, will just hand us over.
Right.
And
So a couple things on that. And I'm glad you hit it. You know, number one, we tend to look at the kings of the Bible like David as like president of the United States. You know, we almost compare them the same way. Like, okay, the leader of that country, leader of our country. You know, and it's like that nation of Israel is not really happening like it used to. And you know, I know you mentioned that. What did you say about the American Revolution?
The
I said I can't.
Yeah. You said because it prospered. Okay, so yeah, I get what you're saying about how the country has prospered. Now I'm with you on I cannot deem it as it was sin or not sin. No,
Yeah,
no.
I'm not making a claim one way or the other.
And neither am I. I am simply wanting the listener to question it and just really really think about it.
I don't want the listener to go away and say, "Did you hear Jeremy and Wes and Todd say that the American Revolution was unchristian?"
Because we did not say that. We absolutely did not say that. So
Well, you see how God blessed.
yeah, so you were saying that God blessed the country, and they're like, okay, yeah, absolutely. Okay, but look in the Bible. How many times did somebody sin and do something wrong, and God blessed them anyway? He did that to Israel multiple times. They complained and were being awful. God's like, quail. That was kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time. But they were complaining, and they were like, Egypt had meat. I want to go back to Egypt. I want to go back to slavery because at least we had meat to eat. I'm tired of manna, in the desert. Understandable complaints, but God still blessed them. God still provided for them. God still got them into the promised land. Yeah,
until it reached a point
Yep.
to where their sin was so great,
Yep.
God was like, "Okay, fine,
You do
you do you," and of course, then they get carried off into Babylon. And the point I was making with that
Yeah, go
is,
for it. Sorry.
I could very well see that happening on down the line. The farther and farther we get away from blessing God and acknowledging Him and following Him as a country,
Right.
there will come a time where God just removes His hand of blessing and be like,
And
turns us over to.
and that very well may be.
I don't think it's happened yet.
Yeah.
I believe that there have been some wake up calls
Yeah.
over the last 50 years to
Right.
century or whatever. But we haven't been overtaken and
Yeah, exactly. And if the church wants to change that, excuse me. Sorry. If the church wants to change that, they're going to have to do it by making disciples.
right.
Because if they're just going, just coming to church every Sunday and, doing their worship service, coming to Sunday school, and that's it, hey, let's overcome our sin. Hey, pray for so-and-so. Then yeah, this country's going to continue to go down. But if you go out and actually make disciples and talk with people and love on them, stop going to these protests and stuff where, they're protesting against or the overturn of Roe v. Wade and like Bible's up and you're wrong and stuff. And why don't you go make a relationship with somebody?
Right.
Because that's what's going to do. Listen, if we do God's strategy of discipleship, we're going to win. We're going to do well. But we don't use his strategy. We use ours.
No, because we are conditioned to the, what is it? Might makes right. If
Yeah.
I can out scream you,
Right.
then I win the argument.
Ah, yeah.
And
Todd had something.
I'm sorry, Todd.
Go ahead, Todd. Sorry.
Well, here's King Hezekiah.
Hezekiah.
Second Chronicles 29, 2. It says, well, I'll start in 1. It says, Hezekiah became king when he was 25 years old, and he reigned 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was, I'm going to mess this up, Abijah, the daughter of Zechariah. And he did what was right in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father David had done.
That's few and far between.
Now, is he the one that reinstituted the year of Jubilee?
I don't know.
I don't know, but it
There's one of them had like reintroduced some of the festivals that they had stopped. That
I'm
would be
not-
a good topic to have Rabbi back on
Yeah,
to
there
talk
you go.
about the kings and
Yeah.
yeah.
That would be
Yeah, that would be awesome. I enjoy when he's here.
coming soon. We also need to have him back for like Hanukkah to talk about that.
Hanukkah. That'd be fun. We could talk about the Apocrypha. That's where it is.
You know, hearing you all talk and everything and talking about these protests and all this stuff and, whatever you want to say, Democrats or Republicans, whatever, sinners, everything. What didn't Paul say that our fight wasn't against flesh and blood?
Right.
It's against principalities and powers, rulers of darkness. I'm probably messing that up, but
Yeah, that's about right.
so when you look at someone, I've had to do this for myself. I've been that guy that's like, well, you can't be a Democrat and be a Christian.
Yeah, I was going to get on that in a minute.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I've been that guy. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm not saying. Well, I'm not. It's nobody's business what I vote anyway. But first of all, it don't matter who you vote for; they're not going to save the country.
You got
Jesus
that
is
right.
the only one that's going to be doing that, and if there's any saving this country. But anyhow, when I look at someone like that, I used to look at people like that and be like, "You're killing my country." No, they need Jesus.
That's exactly right.
They need Jesus, and who am I to yell and scream back at them? Because then I'm just like them, and I'm not. I'm not any different. So why should they want what I have? Because what's any different if I'm acting just like they
Yep.
are in my righteous anger toward them? What's any different about how I'm acting than how they're acting?
Right.
Yeah,
People don't care what you know until they know that you care.
that's exactly right.
Yes.
And what really angers me is when politicians weaponize
Oh,
Christ.
gosh, no kidding.
and you've had pastors who have stood in pulpits and have said you cannot be a true Christian and vote Democrat. Well, now look, I don't care Democrat, Republican. There are terrible people on both sides of the aisle. The last 2 presidential elections, I have stood in the voting booth looking down going, God help me.
Eeny, meeny,
Who
miny,
am I going to vote for?
Really? All the elections I've been a part of have been that way.
Well, these last 2 presidential elections was just like, Lord help me.
I remember what I was going to say. We need to show the love of Christ, and then we need to tell them the love of Christ.
Yes.
And we don't do that by yelling from a pulpit saying, you cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat.
Yeah.
No, get that out of here right now.
I have met some what we would call holy people Christian who live their lives according to the precepts that Christ shows us in the gospel, but they identify as Democrats. Mm-hmm. And I have seen some downright pagans who call themselves Republicans.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's going to be a lot of people who are shocked to learn that Jesus Christ has no political affiliation whatsoever.
Yeah.
Before we transition, one more thing that I wanted to mention is when Jesus talks to Pilate, and he specifically tells Pilate, you would not have any authority if it was not given to you by God. So we need to remember that the people that are in power, they're in power because God gave them
put
that
them there.
authority.
God
So
allowed them.
we need to respect that, whether you like that authority or not.
Well,
Yes.
and you also need to remember God gives a country the leader it deserves.
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean,
that's good.
go back and look at the kings of Israel
Wow.
and that whole. So, I don't really get. Again, go back the last two presidential elections. And depending on who wins, you're going to have one half of the country just think the world is going to end
Right.
the very next day. And it's like, well,
Or is the Antichrist?
yeah,
Don't forget about that.
yeah.
We've had multiple of those.
That's a whole different
Yes.
podcast. That's a whole different podcast episode. But it's like that person is there because God allowed them to rise to that position.
Exactly.
So, go ahead, Todd. You had your Bible open, like,
Well, I was
like
just-
you're ready to.
I was just going to read that what I talked about there earlier. It says in Ephesians 6:12. It says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places."
Well, and then also, what?
That's not your Democrat friend.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
because I'm going to say there is another letter that Paul writes, and he says, live in peace with your brother as much as possible. And like every member who runs for any kind of political office should remember that.
Yeah.
Because now you cannot have a civilized, healthy debate anymore. It's
Right.
kind of like, oh, you disagree with me? Well, that's hate speech. And it's like,
People aren't allowed to disagree anymore.
yeah.
And I think that part is sad. All right, so let's transition real quick, and I wanna hit on specifically worship services, and having the Americanizing your Christian service, specifically like July 4th services, like what you were mentioning earlier. So what are some of the kind of services that you guys have seen in the past? Just different things that maybe it bothered you, maybe it didn't.
Well, what I have seen, and again, let me preface this by saying my professional ministry experience has all been in Southern Baptist churches.
Yeah.
So I cannot speak as to what Methodists do. What
This is just your experience.
It's just my experience in a Southern Baptist church. It's typically the weekend of the 4th of July or Memorial Day or the Sunday before Veterans Day. The last church I was in, I think I started in June of that year. No, I started in July. I came in after the 1st of July. So it was not November. It was the Veterans Day weekend. And the pastor told me that I needed to have patriotic music in the service.
Not worship music, patriotic.
Music. And to me, that, because people's like, oh yeah, America the Beautiful, God's in there. America the Beautiful, God shed his grace on thee. God bless America has nothing to do with God.
Well, speaking of God Bless America, that's honestly the one that has bothered me the most, because it says God bless America, the land
Yeah.
that I love. Stand beside her and guide her. You know,
should be reversed. It
whoa,
should
whoa,
be-
whoa, whoa! Hey, Lord, lead me.
Yes.
I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah, it
but
should
that's
be
totally what that
should
song
be reversed. The
does.
song should say "America bless God."
Yeah, exactly.
As a worship leader, it was I was still new in the church, and one of the things you have to do as a new leader in the church is, kind of figure out what the culture of that church
Right.
is before you can
Figure out what the sacred cows are.
they make the best hamburger,
Yeah, I wish.
and
I end up being the hamburger.
that's a story. You should share
Just
that on a later episode
A
too.
sacred cow, for those of you who don't know, are there are things in the church that absolutely cannot be changed, like
Right.
moving the organ. Like they're usually it's usually something ridiculous like that. Like you can't like switching the organ on this side to that side or something like
Yes.
that. Like that could be a sacred cow, and you get fired for it. Like it's nuts.
Oh, well, that's a whole different episode in itself.
Yeah.
We should have. Of course, I guess I'd have to do it anonymous with their face blurred out or something. Let's
That'd be
talk to
great.
pastors about sacred cows they've tried to tipping the sacred cows. Anyway, it's talking about, trying to learn the culture of the church. And as a worship leader, anytime you've got the body of Christ gathered in that room for a corporate worship service, it is all about Jesus
Yeah.
and making much of Jesus. We're there to worship Jesus. We are not there to worship the United States of America.
That's exactly right.
Now, I have been to churches who balance that by either that afternoon or some other time during that day or that weekend, they have a community festival, kind of an outdoor carnival type thing with you'd call it a service, but it's almost like a rally where, they have fireworks, they have a pastor get up and give a message, and then they do the patriotic
Yeah.
music. I'm okay with that, like in a community setting. Yeah. Star Spangled Banner, America the Beautiful.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Let it rip. When you're in a worship service, you're there to worship Jesus Christ.
That's exactly right.
And the only one that would come to me was the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. The problem with that is every time I sing that, my inner Elvis comes out. When I hit the glory, glory, hallelujah, and I just want the big flag to unfurl. In fact, I was like, let's just get a big flag. And when we hit the glory, glory, hallelujah, unfurl the flag from the baptistry. I just couldn't take it seriously
Yeah.
because to me, again, we're worshiping the United States. And Todd, I actually had a conversation about this with Vicky my first year there because she was in the service, military veteran and stuff. And I asked her, I said, am I wrong? I said, am I not getting it? I get that we want to honor the members of the church family
Yes.
who have served. Yeah, let's recognize them. Let's have
Honor
them-
our veterans. Honor the
Yes.
people that have fallen. Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but I said constructing a whole worship service. I said I have a problem with that. And I said, if I'm wrong, help me see that I'm wrong. She said, no, I come to worship Jesus.
That's exactly right.
She says, I'm proud that I served. I'm glad that I served. But when I come to church, I come to worship Jesus.
Right.
So that helped me tremendous. That gave me confidence going forward to where now on every one of those weekends, the songs, I intentionally picked songs who the lyrics of those songs talked about the authority of Jesus Christ, his lordship, the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
A song that, Jesus Christ, I was trying to think of the song. It's been 2 or 3 years since I've sung it, but the line goes, he is the ruler who will rule over every other throne, including the United States of America. Go ahead.
So can I speak to the veteran?
Yes,
Do
please
it.
do.
Okay.
To be clear, Todd
Yes, let's-
is a veteran. He's got an Air Force hat right here.
Yes. So
Yeah.
I am a United States Air Force veteran.
And proud of it.
Some of the Marines and Well, most of the rest of the service out there, except for maybe the Coast Guard, will take issue with that, you know, and
chair
say that I
force.
really wasn't in the military. I was in the Air Force. But yeah,
They call it the chair force.
yeah. So, you know, it was a job for me. It was a way to support my family. I'm proud of my country that I live in, and you know, proud of my service. I'm glad that people here paid taxes so that I could draw a salary and and support my family. Okay.
Yeah.
That being said, every single time that I am in a service where they have the veterans stand up, there is a conflict going on inside of my mind. First of all, I don't want to stand up because, yes, I am very proud of my service, but it makes me feel it makes pride come up inside of
You
me.
shine the light off of Jesus and put it on you.
Right. It makes me feel like, and I am proud of that. And sometimes I get up, I'm like, yeah, that's right, I served. But I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to take any spotlight away from Jesus. But then again, I don't want to just sit there because I don't want to look like that I'm not proud of my service and my country, right? So I would actually prefer in a service, in a worship service, if they did not recognize the veterans.
I
That's
totally
just-
thought you were going to say that you never wanted to stand up because you were in the Air Force.
No. Yeah,
Hey,
I'm in the chair
I'm not
force.
military.
Yeah.
I have nothing
Yeah.
respect for all of it. Coast Guard all the way up.
So-
My wife was Navy.
Navy, yes.
Yeah.
So my wife was, Vicky was Air Force. We're both Air Force. Didn't meet in the Air Force or anything, but we both served in the Air Force. But she was very proud of her service and everything. But I think she felt the same way.
Yeah.
You know, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember, but I think we've had this conversation, me and her, before. And so.
Well, some of the
yeah.
things you're saying is what she told me when I asked her that, because her point was, you know, church is about Jesus. It's
Yes.
not about any human, you know, no matter what they've accomplished.
Right.
And she said, I'm proud that I served, and I did serve.
And in
But-
the church, that's what we need to be careful about. We need to make sure that we are worshiping Jesus and not our country. And be patriotic. Absolutely. America, 100% Second Amendment, whatever. That's cool. But you do not identify as an American. You identify as Christian. I identify as a Christ follower. I am an American, but that is not my identity. And, we need to be careful on how we identify and how we see ourselves. So, for example, if I see myself, my identity is a husband, okay? If my wife dies, did I lose my identity? Uh-oh. If I'm a father and I lose my children, did I lose my identity? If America dissolves, did you lose your identity? We need to put our identity in something that's infinite, which is Jesus.
Yeah. So I hesitate to bring this up
If you want us to cut
because
it, we'll cut
I don't really worship my service.
Yeah.
A lot of people I know worship their service.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. I don't really worship that. I am proud of that, but so I tried to look it up in here, the core values for the military. Now this was my flight chief in the Air Force, and so he was basically my big supervisor, not the commander of the squadron and not the actual chief over the squadron, but he was over the flight that I reported to.
it. Okay.
And he always said, core values, our core values there, maybe not necessarily the official core values of the military. And I tried to look it up and I can't find anything on that, but it's God first, it's family second, country, and service before self.
Yeah, I've heard that.
You know,
Yeah.
so I thought that to be, and at the time I was not a follower of Christ. Okay,
Yeah.
I was raised in a Christian school and in church. When I got out of high school, I left that behind and did my own thing for a long time. So when I was in the military, I was not a follower of Christ, but I thought that to be that stood out to me, that man would tell us it's God first,
That's right.
then it's your family,
Then country.
then it's country,
Yeah.
you know, and then it's service before self. So that puts yourself down fifth in there in that area. So I thought that was really cool, and that's the way I remember it. I'm sure there's a lot of people that were Marines that are going to remember that differently.
Yeah. Let me call my brother and see.
Yeah, I'm probably going to get all kinds of hateful comments about this stuff, but
right.
anyway,
Hey, comments are comments.
yeah. So there you go. I that always stood out to me, and it's something that I've been thinking about this whole podcast.
That's
I just
excellent.
wanted to put it
Yeah.
out there.
I'm glad
Thank
you
you
put
for
that out
sharing
there.
that. Yeah. I don't think we get comments because we've said that if we got nasty comments, we were going to read them on the podcast.
No.
So that's probably why nobody.
Come on. Be
probably why-
bold.
Maybe I'll get your first comment there.
No, that was good. I appreciate it. That was a word. That'll preach.
Yeah.
So, now let's give an altar call and go home.
Yeah, so just, wrapping this up, I think that we need to be careful at even our theology. And we're not going to jump on this tangent, but often when we read our Bibles, we read them with our American sunglasses. And we read them, and we're like, yeah, America, and we just, that's how we read them, instead of through the eyes of the people at the time, which is what we should be doing.
Right.
We read too much into, like, if my people that are called by my name, America, or I love, people that like to talk about Revelation and whatnot, and they, the Antichrist is going to be president of the United States, maybe he will, maybe he won't, there's not really.
Let me throw this out
Sure
and
on
see. I'm sure this will cause a few people's heads to explode. But I remember a friend of mine was so upset when Obama was elected president. She was convinced he was the Antichrist.
Right.
And she was like, why are you not more upset about this? So I tried to share with her, like, God is in control of all of this.
Amen.
He put this person in this position. He allowed this person to win the election to be the leader. And I said, now, when I read the book of Revelation and it talks about, the battle of Armageddon coming against Israel, and it talks about kings from the north and kings from the east, I said, where are the kings of the west?
There it is.
And I said, now, I have nothing to base this off. This is just my own interpretation, and I could be completely wrong. But when I read through that, it kind of, something in the back of my mind says, the United States might not be a big power player when all the end time
maybe
revelation,
nothing.
like there may be something that just takes us off of the board.
Yep.
Now, I have nothing to back that. I don't have any theologian to back that up.
Right.
But it's just like, kings from the north, that's often attributed to being Russia.
Yeah.
And, Russia and Israel have had conflict.
But those
and
are-
then
Yeah.
from the east, that's the Chinese. The south would be Egypt and all of that. I said, but where's the kings from the west?
Right.
And it may be, maybe we're standing with Israel, because I know we've been a staunch supporter of Israel,
Right.
going back to the Abrahamic covenant, where God says, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you.
Right.
But I said, I'm not 100% sure the Antichrist will be a president of the United
Yeah,
States.
he may not.
Yeah, I think it'll be some leader over in Europe.
If that's even how
But
it goes.
again, that is a whole nother
Well-
podcast.
Man, there's so much in end times theology. honestly, I just leave it alone.
Yeah.
One day I'm sure we'll do an episode on it, and it'll be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
There's not enough information to make. I mean, honestly, there's not.
Well,
the point of Revelation is to say God wins. Hey guys, I know that we are suffering, we're being tortured, we're being boiled in oil and stuff. Like, I mean, just lots of
but be
awful
encouraged.
things. But be encouraged. God wins.
Right.
In the end.
Yes.
Right. There was in the episode that aired today, on the day that we're recording this. This was the first episode of the second season. Yeah. You made a comment which I thought was really good. I was like, "Oh, I need to tell him that," because it happens very rarely. And but you said, you know, if the Bible doesn't speak on it, don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Like, leave it alone.
Yep.
But how often do pastors, Sunday school teachers, church leaders, well, the Bible doesn't really say, but here's what you should believe.
Right.
I was like, if the Bible doesn't say, don't say. Or just say, I don't know. But church leaders do not like the phrase, I don't know.
Yo, I know.
Why don't you know? You went to school. You got a degree. Why don't you know? Because the Bible doesn't speak on it.
The fact that I am aware that I don't know is a proof of my education. Honestly, my education was all about, this is how much we don't know and how much you definitely don't know.
Yeah.
I was like, we know so little, it's a joke.
Well, and I always said, I got my bachelor's degree and then went into my first church thinking, oh, I have a degree. I've been trained. I'm educated. I know what I'm doing. And then you get into a church and actually start working and having to relate to and minister to people. And you like, I have no clue what I'm doing.
One of the things that I like to do, which is with the I don't know thing, and I do this with apologetics. Whenever I'm talking to somebody and maybe trying to convince them, or if they're asking me, like I don't go to them, they come to me and then I'll answer it. So one of the things I might ask them to do is I'll draw a circle, and I'll say, okay, this circle represents all knowledge that could be known. Shade in the amount that you know. And I don't care if you are a 3-year-old or a 90-year-old with 12 doctorates, you're going to put the same thing, a little bitty dot. It's not going to even be measurable, the difference between the 3-year-old and then the super duper genius. Like it's just not. And we need to be okay with that. Did anybody have anything else on this topic? If not, we can just wrap it up for the night.
How do you want to wrap it up? You want me to give a little Elvis?
Yeah, if you want to. Do it, that'd be great. So just to recap, and what we really want the listener to do is, one, when you're reading the Bible, don't read it through your American eyes. Really try to understand the context, because otherwise we're going to place a lot of things on America that aren't there. Number two, don't identify with being an American. Like, I'm an American. That is my identity. Like, yeah, I'm an American, but that's not where my identity is. Because again, if it falls, do you not have an identity anymore? Because guess what? The only thing that's eternal? Jesus. And that's what I'm going to put my identity in. And then, when you're worshiping at church and whatnot, are you really worshiping God if you're, doing patriotic music and whatnot? Again, be a patriot. Absolutely, 100%. But Jesus is my number one. Jesus is my first, period.
I enjoyed this.
Yeah, that was a good talk, guys. I appreciate it.
Todd, you're now the new permanent guest.
Yeah, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
We'll eventually have Eli back. Maybe.
Maybe if he
comes back from Portugal.
Comes back from his honeymoon. So
that's not a honeymoon. We don't want anybody to get the wrong idea. That is not a honeymoon. He's going on a mission trip.
You can cut that out. I would assume you would cut that out.
Yeah, I probably would, but just in case.
So.
Thanks for listening. For more information on DDS Faith Ministries, please visit our website at ddsfaith.org and follow us on social media: Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.